Welcome to this section of the tutorial. Okay, I think you've watched the last tutorial and we're able to actually save information into the database, and we can get them from this view. Okay, now the next thing in which we are supposed to do is we will have to write this edit button. So we want to do this edit functionality in such a way that whenever, let's say, a user makes a mistake in registering an employee, he can click on this button and it goes to an edit view, which you can go to an edit view which this particular data can actually be edited. Okay, so what we'll do is we haven't done the functionality yet, but this is what we want to accomplish, in such that when we click on this button, it should populate these fields with the user's information. Right, it should populate this field with the user's information, and when this button should change to update, right, so that should be updated, and that is just it. Okay, let's get into the code and see where we left. So this is the dashboard.php file which we are working on, and what we did in order to present this information, the whole of this information from the database, was we got everything from the database, right, an employee database. So set select star from employee database, got the data and saved it inside a result variable, right, and now this variable is being looped through. The result is being looped through and presented it in this format in a table. And for the edit button, what we actually did is we are linking to the index page, right, which is this registration page. We are linking to this page, we are linking to the edit page, which is the index page, right. We are linking to this page and we are passing in an ID, right. We are passing in a method, a variable, right, a variable using the get method called employee ID, and we are passing in the employee's ID. So now this variable, which should be gotten from this index.php class, will help us to get the ID in which we have clicked on. Let's say if we click on this person, this user, it should get the ID. See, when we hover, the ID shows down here. Just look a little bit down here, you see it shows employee ID 1. If I go to the next one, it shows down here employee ID 2, right, or 3, and so on. So it gives the employee ID that is in the database. So we'll use that ID in order to query that user's information and populate it into that field, right. Okay, now let's do that. So what we'll do is we'll go into this index.php file and get this ID, right. So we'll get there, and I would like to write this, let's say, up this way. So open my PHP tag, and what I'll do is I want to check if that ID has been set. Okay, if that ID has been set, or if that ID has been sent through this, because this employee class at the beginning, when you register an employee, an ID is not being passed, right. But when you click on this guy, when you click on this guy, when you click on this guy, you see that an ID is being passed, right. So what we want to check is if this ID, employee ID, actually is in this view or is being passed. If it is set, then we want to use it and manipulate it. So what we do is to say if that ID has been set and the name of the ID is employee ID, right, EMID. So say if it's set, since we're passing through the get method, we say $_get. If it is set the employee ID, right. So if that employee ID has been set, what we want to do is we first want to save it in a variable, right. So say $_get employee ID. Now the next thing I want to do is I want to query the database and get that user's record based on that ID, right. So I'll say $SQL and I'll query the database. So say select star from the employee table, because we have a table called employee, right, where the ID of that employee table is equal to the ID which has been gotten, right, $id. Now if we have gotten that, we want to actually get the data, right, we want to get the data. So say $result will be equals to, before doing this, actually we know that we are going to use a method inside our models, right. We're going to get the data, and this is the only file that communicates to our database, and we have a method here called get data that gets whatsoever data which is being passed, and it's inside the employee class, right. So what to actually do is I'll have to create an instance of that employee class, then so that we were able to get the data, right. So say creating an instance of the employee, of the employee class. So I'll create an instance called employee, and I'll create a employee, right. So that's my instance variable, employee. So for me to get access to this get data method, I'll need to use that class and get there, right. So what I'll do is I'll say $employee, right, then get data. It's a method, and the method takes in nothing, right. The method takes in a statement, an argument called square, because in this employee method we have something that receives it, right, receives a query. So what we are actually saying is we have created an instance of this employee class, and we are looking through that get data method, right, and we are passing in our SQL statement. So this will come here and query the database, save it in an array, then return the array value, right. So everything will be returned in this variable. For us to see if we actually get the result, what I'll do is I can say print underscore r, then I print the result, so that we'll see what we actually get. So if I go back to this table and go to the dashboard and click, let's say, on id4, right, it says uncaught variable class employee. Oh, it says employee not found, right, employee not found. So if I go to this, I have employee. Okay, the employee has not been found because actually we haven't included it in our file, right. So what we'll actually do is I'll just copy this guy, because he doesn't have access to this code, so I'll just copy it, and our employee class is models. Inside the models folder, and we have employee.php, employee.php. Now if I go back and refresh, you see it gives the associative array for that user, right. You see the full name is EEE, the department is assurance, and all of that, right. If I go back and I click on, let's say, this guy, it gives a different array, full name as this, the department, and all of that, right. So it gives that user, so we know that we are able to get that user, that particular user's information. So what is left is for us to actually save it and pass it inside these fields, right, inside these fields. Okay, I'll delete this because we don't longer need it. Okay, or I'll just comment it for debugging purposes if we have an error. Okay, now that we know that we actually have we are actually able to get that particular user's information, what I'll do is we'll actually want to loop through that information, loop through that array, and populate it in this field, right, populate it in this field. Now what we actually think is like what we did in our dashboard when we got the information. We did for each loop, and then we loop through the table. Now we cannot actually do that here because at first this form actually has two functionalities. Okay, this form has two functionalities. First, it registers the user. So at first there's an instance in which we want the form field to be empty, and there's an instance in which we want the form field to be populated with the data. So how do we actually solve that? What I'll do is we can create some global variables that will hold our information, right? We can create some global variables. So I can say creating global variables, right? And I'll create my global variables that will hold the user's information. So I can say full name, and I'll leave it to empty because well, let's just write it down. You see, so username to be error free. We also have email address, our email address, we have number, we have gender, we have biography. I'll just save it as biography, bio. Right, we have the matricle number, matricle, save the field as empty. We have do we have department? So we have username is already there, email, phone number, address, and gender. Okay, so we have address and gender. Right, so we have address and gender. There should be 8 fields, 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8. Okay, now what I'll do is, if that guy is set, right, if it is set and we have queried the database, we know we are able to get the information, or want to populate now that information inside this variable, right, inside this variable. Or better still, before doing that, what I'll do is I'll come to these input fields, right, to these various input fields, and I'll just write the PHP code inside before looping through this, right? Just bear with me before looping through this. So I'll come inside here and I'll give it a value, open my PHP tag, and I'll check if that variable is empty, right? So if that variable is empty, or better to say if the variable exists, full name, right, what I want to do is I'll actually want to print that value, right? So if the value exists, then print that particular value, say full name, which means if our full name by default is empty, right, I was saying if the full name variable exists, print it, right? So if this value is not set, if this guy is not set, right, so it means our full name variable is empty, so it's going to print empty because we are creating it. But if we are editing an information, it means this value will be set, which will later on do it here, will be set, and it will print the value of that variable, right? So I'll do same for the others. What I'll do is I'll copy, okay, let me just write it, value, come on, open our PHP, and I'll say if the username variable is set, then you should echo the username, right? If the username variable exists, just print it. So it means if it is empty, you print it. If it has an information in it, you print it, right? Okay, now for the select jobs, right, for the drop down menu, what we'll actually do is we can actually say I'll remove this guy, this selected option, and what I'll do is I'll say if. Now look at how I did my if and end if. Right, if you're a supplying user, you just, what you need to do is you just press if and it opens and closes. Right, that's a dynamic way so that we can write HTML inside. So I'll say if my $department exists, that's if this department variable exists. Department, what's this? Department. So I need a department. Let me see, do we have department? Yeah, department. So I'll create department. It should be empty. Okay, now I'll say if the department variable exists, or if it is there, if there's a department variable, what I'll do is I'll create an option, right, and this option I'll give it default as selected, right, selected equals to selected, right, and the value in which I'll give to this variable is actually the value that has been passed, right, or the department variable. So I'll say echo the department variable, department. Okay, so that is it, right? If that department variable is set, I will do that. So let's do same for magical, right? For magical, so I'll give it a value, do the same thing, open my PHP, come on, open my PHP, and I'll say if the magical variable exists, then we should print the value, right? So I'll say magical. Do same for email and for the others. So value if email exists, then echo the email. Simple as that. Do same for number. Open my PHP docs and I'll say if the number variable exists, then equal the number. Last, I'll say, come on, open our PHP tags. I'll say if the variable address exists, if the address exists, then echo the address. And for gender, we're going to do the same thing as we did for the department, right? So I'll copy this and I'll say if the gender actually exists, paste this here. You know the selected value is that, but the value of it should be a gender. And the last one is, since this is a text area, we will not give it a value, right? So we'll put a value inside here. So say if open our PHP, I'll say if bow exists, then we should echo the bow variable. And let's see if everything is okay. So if I refresh, no errors, right? No errors. Okay, no errors. So I'm seeing one error. The IT department is already selected by default. So what we can actually do is we can create a new field and make it to be empty. The value is empty.